بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين، والصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء والمرسلين. أيها الإخوة والأخوات, السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته, and welcome to session 29, the 29th session. And in this session, let's look at the passage that we've looked at last time in session 28 about Abdullah Muhammad, the 23-year-old. And what we're going to do in this session is change the pronoun from singular, from Muhammad, for example, or Abdullah Muhammad, to they, and see what happens to the verbs that are underlined. So let's start so that we, of course, go through some stuff that I have for you in this session and in the final one. So let's start. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. If you look at this, of course, this text, well, I'll read it first very quickly, and it is about, again, Abdullah Muhammad is 23, and he is an English teacher. He always has a busy day. He gets up at 5 o'clock. He gets up at 5 o'clock and takes a shower. After the Fajr prayer, he has breakfast at 6 o'clock. Then he leaves home at 6:30 and goes to work by car. The normal time to start work at his school is 7:30. He gets to school at 7 because he has to be in class on time. He has lunch at his school's cafeteria. He often has rice and meat for lunch. He usually works late. He finishes work at 3 o'clock every day. On his way home, he sometimes buys a sandwich and eats it at home. He gets home at 4:30 p.m. He never goes out in the evening. He checks his students' homework assignments. He doesn't work on weekends. He goes to bed at 10. Okay, now this text, the subject in this text, the subject is one person, Abdullah Muhammad, and that is, of course, singular. What if we change that to to plural, for example, to the pronoun they? What would happen to the verbs? Let's look at. I will go through the whole text with you and notice what happens to the verbs and to some other, of course, not just verbs and other pronouns. So let's look at it here. So if we change, for example, Abdullah Muhammad, let's add another person. Let's say Abdullah Muhammad and Abdulaziz Ibrahim, for example. We'll say Abdullah Muhammad and Abdulaziz Ibrahim are. The first thing that we will change is the verb, because we have plural now. So it would be what? Are. So Abdullah Muhammad and Abdulaziz Ibrahim are 23. And what? He? No, we have to change it to they. And they are, again, they are an English teacher. Well, do we still keep an? No. We drop it because an can only be used with singular nouns. So we drop that an and say Abdullah Muhammad and Abdulaziz Ibrahim are 23 and they are English teachers, and we add s because, again, it's plural. All right, and then here he becomes they again. They always, and then we get to the verb. The verb with singular is, with he, it is has. But if we have they here, because we're talking about Abdullah Muhammad and Abdulaziz Ibrahim, so they always have and not has. It becomes have. They always have a busy day. And then they get, we take out the s because, again, the subject becomes plural, and that is they. So they get up at 5, at 5 o'clock. And take, no more takes. Right? Take a shower or showers. Well, they're not just one, two people, and they take showers. After the Fajr prayer, they have breakfast at 6 o'clock. Now, of course, you can follow with me. I think probably only the first couple of sentences, first two sentences, you will probably just wait for me to change the pronouns and change the verbs, but then as we go through the passage, through the text, you will, of course, you will tell yourselves faster. So after the Fajr prayer, they have breakfast at 6 o'clock. Then what happens to he? Then they, and what happens to leaves here? Then they leave home at 6:30 and go to work by car. You're right, and go to work by car. The normal time to start work at, look at this here. This is a what? This is another pronoun that we use it, and we call it's one of the, of course, possessive pronouns. We use it with he, right? But now we're talking about they. So the normal time to start work at what? There. It's T-H-E-I-R. That possessive pronoun. Okay, so the normal time to start work at their school, right? Well, we don't have to change it because it can be one school. They work in one school. We don't have to say their schools because maybe they work in just one school. All right, the normal time to start work at their school is 7:30. And then what? What happens here? They get to school at 7 because they, again, and here they have to be in class on time. Okay? And then here, they have lunch at what? What happens to this? At, just like that one, they have lunch at their what? Their school's cafeteria. Doesn't change, okay, because it's one for both of them, for every teacher there. And then here, what change? What we should have? That he also becomes they. They often have rice and meat for lunch. And then they usually work. We drop the S here also. They work late. So they usually work late. And then they finish. So we take that ES here. We don't say finishes anymore. So they finish work at 3 o'clock every day. On their way home, not his way home, because again now we're using they. Abdullah Muhammad and Abdulaziz Ibrahim. So on their way home, okay, they sometimes what? They sometimes buy. Well, by the way, when we say here on their way home, assuming that they live in one place, in one apartment, one house, one apartment. All right. So on their way home, they sometimes buy, not buys, they sometimes buy a sandwich and eat. Okay? Well, here we have to stop. Do they take only one sandwich? We have to do some change here. Well, on their way home, they sometimes buy sandwiches because, again, there are two. So they should buy, of course, buy sandwich. They can buy one and then cut it in half, and one take one half and the other takes the other half. But of course, normally they will take two sandwiches or more. So they sometimes buy sandwiches. Again, sandwiches here, it ends with CH, so that's a ch sound, the affricate sound, ch, and the plural would be sandwiches. They buy sandwiches, and again, we drop that because this is no more. It's not a singular noun anymore when we say sandwiches. They buy sandwiches and eat what? And eat them, because we're talking about what? The sandwich. It here refers to the sandwich. So they buy sandwiches and eat them. That it here becomes them. At home. Well, it doesn't change because assuming that they are or that they live in one place. All right. They get home, not gets, they get home at 4:30 p.m. And then they never go out, not goes, of course. Okay, they never go out in the evening. They, what? They check And again here, just like this pronoun here, they check their students, okay, homework assignments, no change, all right, and then they don't, okay, they do not, or they don't work, notice that we changed doesn't to don't because, again, we have the pronoun they, so they don't work on weekends, they go to bed at 10. They go to bed at 10. Notice how we, of course, changed it. I deliberately didn't want to put it there because I want you to work on it yourselves. Just saying it hopefully would be sufficient. Okay. Now that we have changed the pronoun from singular to plural, from he to they, right, let's look at the exercise and see what happens to it. Read the questions about Abdullah's day, complete the answers. Now, I would say read the questions about Abdullah and what name we give that person? Abdulaziz, yeah. Abdullah and Abdulaziz's days, okay, complete the answers. All right. Or their day, of course, it's one day. Maybe even that's every day, actually. So look at the questions here, assuming that we have what? We're talking about the day of both Abdullah and Abdulaziz. Now, what time? Now, this has to change, of course. What time does he get up? Now, that's assuming that we're talking about one person, but now we have both Abdullah and Abdulaziz. So we say, what time do what? They. What time do they get up? The answer will be they, okay, they get up at 5. So we change that he to get and not gets, all right, because again, it's they. And then when do, all right, when do they have breakfast? They have and not has. They have breakfast at 6. Number 3, when do they go to work? Again, here becomes they go and not goes. They go to work at 6:30. Number 4, where, can you do it? Yes, do. Where do what? They, again, where do they have lunch? According, of course, to the text, they, this he becomes they not has, have. They have lunch at school. Number 5, what do they have for lunch? Again, he, not, no he, it's they again. They have, not has. They have rice and meat. And here, this is a yes/no question. The rest of the questions are yes/no questions. Does for singular, but we don't want does anymore. We want do, because we're asking about they, about Muhammad and Abdullah Muhammad and Abdulaziz Ibrahim. So that do then becomes, that does becomes do, changes to do. Do he, do they, not do he, again, do they go to work by car? Yes, yes. And this one becomes they again, and we have to change that one. So yes, they do. Yes, they do. And number 7, do they have lunch at home? What? What is the answer? No, they don't. No, they don't. Again, we change he to they, and doesn't to, we change it to don't. And number 8, what happens to does? It also changes to do, just like these two, number 6 and 7. So do they go out in the evening? No, they don't, not doesn't. And the last question, do they work on weekends? Do they work on weekends? The answer is no, they don't. This is only for singular, and that's why we have it he doesn't. No, he doesn't. But because we have they, we say no, they don't. All right. looking at the other exercise, ask and answer questions about, again, not only Abdullah's day, but Abdullah and Abdulaziz's day or days. Again, this is now more WH questions or information questions. What time have breakfast? Of course, we need what time, and then what do we have? We said the auxiliary. Does it still, stay as this? Do we still keep does? Not anymore. We don't have does anymore. We have to change it to do. So we say, what time do? Because again, as I said, it's now they. What time do, and this becomes they, what time do they have breakfast? Right? And then the question mark. And you can use the rest. This becomes, of course, when do, not does. Again, this slide, okay, this slide that you see right now is about Abdullah's day. And be careful, it's not about Abdullah's day anymore. It's about Abdullah and Abdulaziz, two people. And therefore, we change the pronouns, we change the verbs, we change the possessives, and, just throughout. So you do it yourselves throughout. I mean, I'm going to go through it, of course, with you together. So that when, number 2, when leave home. So when, okay, when, that question, of course, here, right? When does he leave home? That's Abdullah's day. That's about Abdullah. Now we're asking about Abdullah and Abdulaziz. So we say, when do they leave home? When do they leave home? And this becomes, when do they get to work? And number 4, that does become, or becomes, do, of course. So, do they, not he, do they go to work by car? And do they get to work? Do they get to work at 7? And what do they have for lunch? What do they have for lunch? I'm changing it, right? And when do they finish work? And what about this? Does eat in his office. Again, you got to do that yourselves. I think you can do it before I, of course, give you the answer. Do they, right? It has to be do. Do they? And this changes to what? Well, do they eat in? There's something here we need to change. That his becomes their. Do they eat in their offices? Not office. In their offices? Unless, of course, unless they work in one office, then we can say in their office. And what do, not does, what do they, again, not he, what do they do in the evening? What do they do in the evening? So we have to, of course, go through it again yourself. And as I said, I deliberately, didn't want to, of course, give you put the changes here so that you do it yourselves and go through it. All right, going to the next slide here. Again, we're doing some other changes here. Questions and answer. What time does he have breakfast? That's again about Abdullah. So that's, of course, something that you have to do. You have to change them we have to change them to plural. So what time do they have breakfast? They have breakfast at 6. When do they leave home? They leave home at 6:30. When do they get to work? They get to work at 7. Do they go to work by car? Yes, they do. Do they get to work at 7? Yes, they do. What do they have for lunch? They have rice and meat. When do they finish work? They finish work at 3:30. And do they eat in their offices or in their office? No, they don't. What do they do in the evening? They check their students' assignments. Okay, I've done it very quickly and since it is recorded, you can, of course, just listen to it and do it or change it on another piece of paper. You do another slide for it. Okay. All right. Next slide here is, all right, adding final S to words that end in Y. What do we have here? In verbs, when the subject is singular, when the subject is, of course, like he or Abdullah or, just singular, the pronoun here. The verb, there are some changes, okay, that we have to do in the verb. If you look at the slide here, it says a verb, when it ends with a consonant plus Y, the letter Y, if the verb ends with a consonant plus Y, like for example, the verb cry, look at this one, cry. The last two sounds are what? The R is a consonant and Y. So a consonant like R and Y. Right? In that case, what happens is that we change Y to I and add ES. So we say cries. The baby cries all night. That's an example. Another example, try, tries. He tries to have milk. He tries to have milk. Now, what if the verb, if the verb ends in Y, okay, like for example, you have a vowel plus, if the verb ends with a vowel and a Y, like this here, look at the verb here, the last sound is Y, but before that we have a vowel, like A here. So P-A-Y and enjoy. In that case, what happens is that we add S only. We just add S. Examples. Pay becomes pays, enjoy becomes enjoys. And here are two examples. Ali pays for the dinner. Ali pays for the dinner. He enjoys parties. He enjoys parties. All right. Now, of course, these arrows just add to the explanation, make it a little bit clearer to you to follow what I have just explained. So again, very quickly, the verb, like in case the subject is singular, like he or she or it, right? You have after the subject, you have a verb, and after the verb, and if the verb ends, as I said, ends with a consonant plus Y, then you change it to what? You change that Y to I, and then add ES. Add ES. The example, you see it. Cry becomes cries. Try becomes tries. All right? The baby cries all night. He tries to have milk. But if the verb ends with a vowel followed by the letter Y, what happens is that we just add S. We only add S. Okay? Examples, pay and enjoy. Pays, enjoys. Ali pays for the dinner, or for dinner, you can say that. He enjoys parties. And with this, I come to the end of session 29. أرجو أن تكونوا قد استفدتم من هذه الحلقة. And most of it, as I said, is just only going through that passage, that text about Abdullah's day. I changed it from Abdullah to Abdulaziz Ibrahim, Abdulaziz, and from Abdullah only to Abdulaziz, Abdullah and Abdulaziz, so both of them, from he to they, and we looked at the verbs and how we changed them, how we changed the pronouns, because it is very important, as there has to be some kind of agreement between the subject and the verb, and all pronouns throughout the text must of course be in agreement. All right. Shukran. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.